Welcome, family. I'm Elisa Teague. I am sitting here with Justin Achille. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm holding it together as best I can.
Well, we're here for Renegade Con, and we are doing the World of Darkness Reveals panel, which I think is the most fun panel because we get to spill all of the secrets. But first, before we start, I wanted you to really introduce yourself for any new players that don't know who you are. What do you do over at Paradox?
Sure, that's great. I'm Justin Achille. I'm the brand creative lead for World of Darkness at Paradox Interactive. That's kind of like a creative director, except it's across the brand. So it's not tied to a specific product or project. So I get to get my hands dirty with all the stuff we're discussing today, the RPG stuff. I get to work on comic books. I get to work on a wide variety of transmedia that all helps make up the World of Darkness.
So the best job.
It's pretty good, I have to say.
Well, today we're going to be talking about everything that has to do with the RPG releases that are coming in 2022 for World of Darkness. And you'll notice, everybody, I'm saying World of Darkness and not just Vampire the Masquerade, because we have a lot to show you today. And we have a lot of new books that are coming out. And I just want to say that right now, we already have all of the core rule books, Camarilla, and we have the Anarch book and Sabbat all over at Roll20. They are actually doing a feature for Renegade Game Studios this month and all month long. And so check it out because it really is a valuable tool to add to your tabletop experience. You can play virtually. They have an amazing new dice roller for Vampire that lets you see your successes and your failures right away. And it also is a really great tool for whether you're sitting around the table together even, or playing from far away to be able to pass secret notes and show off as a storyteller, show off information virtually. And it's really great. So go and check that out at Roll20. So now that I talked about Roll20 a little bit, I want to talk about all of the new updates we have for physical products. And the first one is going to be, I have a Second Inquisition update for everybody. I know that we announced Second Inquisition late last year, and now I can officially say that the Second Inquisition sourcebook is en route to our warehouse, and it is going to be in stores very, very soon. And how do I know that? I have a production copy to show off. So look, it is real and amazing. And let's see if I can do what I did when I practiced, was open it up to like a perfect page. Let's see. Oh, it's pretty good one. Oh yeah, I love the artwork in this book. I can't show it all off, but lots of little teaser pictures. I know all of you out there who do all your screen caps. I'll try and screen cap, leave it up there enough for a little screen cap for you to show off on all of your friends. Let's see, let's get one more. And then, ooh. So yeah, very cool stuff. This is on its way. If you haven't heard all about this book, we actually have a cool storytelling panel with Trivia Fox and Deanna D'Amico, and that is happening tomorrow. And make sure to check that out. Check out the Renegade Con calendar for exact times in your time zone so that you can sit in and listen to how you can use the Second Inquisition book and Sabbat to incorporate into your chronicles. So that's our update for Second Inquisition. And then we will move on to another really cool announcement. Justin, we are ready to announce the Vampire the Masquerade Player's Guide. What are your thoughts on the Player's Guide?
Yeah, this is great. We've got a copy of it, well, your text copy of it right now that we're reviewing on the Paradox end. And so this one, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I'm going to kind of pick a cute couple of key topics here to talk about. We've had players mention that several of the clans for Vampire are spread out among a variety of source books. And so, they have to kind of grab this book for this clan, grab this book for this clan. Of course, this is our opportunity to collect all of those clans and bring them into one source so that it's convenient for everyone there. This also includes the clans that were in the free Vampire the Masquerade Companion that Paradox that we gave away at the end of 2020. Oh my gosh, when was this? 2021?
December of 2020.
I can't even remember anymore.
What is time anyway?
And so this is also because the Vampire the Masquerade Companion wasn't ever put into physical print. The clans from that supplement are collected in here, along with the La Sombra, along with the Ministry, along with the Banu Hakim. So they're all in one place. And one of the things that our community has asked for as well is some amount of errata on the stuff that was originally placed in the companion. So that's collected in here as well. Also, one of the things that I think is really cool in here, there's a huge variety of literally player resources. So things like, you mentioned Roll20 a little while ago. There's stuff in here for how to tell a really strong game and how to play a really strong game in virtual environments. If you're at a virtual tabletop instead of around a traditional tabletop. There's also something really cool that I'm looking forward to in here that is the alternate banes for the clans. So this is kind of a new way to play a fresh take on the clans. Every clan has kind of a bane, a weakness that represents it thematically. And this is a chance to, while still remaining true to the ideas that make that clan unique, just kind of vary the weakness of the clan. So you can kind of play with, I guess, different consequences is how it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also love the fact that this player's guide also walks you through character creation in sort of a different way. And it really allows you to create your character in a guided fashion that I think is really important, especially for new players. And I also love the fact that we are getting to print all of the beautiful art that was in Companion so that people can have that art in a hardcover book on their shelf. We're obviously adding in a lot more too. And so I think it's going to be a really useful addition to the core rule book for players to use in their stories. And so this is planned for a summer release, summer 2022. So that one's coming really soon. As you hinted at, this is right now in review at Paradox. And then we are going to get that all laid out and into print for all of you folks at home. So yeah,
and it's also really it takes into account again, I was mentioning listening to the community feedback here. One of the things that we heard from players was that, for example, when we did the Salubri in the companion, the Salubri didn't have archetypes. There are so few Salubri that if we do it archetypes, that's most of the Salubri right there, right? But the players said they wanted some suggestions on, well, what would be a good idea, a good concept for a Salubri. So this book, for example, takes that and runs with it. Listen to people. Hey, here's more of what we want. And we put that in there.
Yeah, there's a lot more to explore here, which is really, really great. And again, different ways to create different types of characters within these clans, and having it as like a one-stop shop for all of the clans all in one place is just so handy. So that is really cool. All right. I know that most people at home would be watching saying, okay, panel over. What more can we ask for? We're finally getting our player's guide. But no, there is so much more, because we are also adding another player tool accessory for all of you at home, which is our beautiful vampire character journal. And there it is. Ooh, it is so cool. It's going to have a linen finish and the red foil ink on the cover. It is so in theme and great to carry around at your table. It's a beautiful book that you will be able to write all of not only your character sheet information in. There are prompts for character background histories, what you did in your life before becoming embraced, how you were embraced, different parts of your community, your coterie, your haven, descriptions of what your disciplines do for you personally, not just like the blanket book description, like how do you use it in play, and all of the space for session notes, relationship maps. There are prompts for everything that will really help get the juices going, and how you can set up goals for your characters. And so that you're basically chronicling your story right there in this gorgeous journal. And I know that for me, I play a ton of different role-playing games. I keep separate journals for every single character in every single chronicle or campaign that I'm playing in. And I have stacks and stacks of notebooks that are just like blank line. I have them all over the place in here that are just blank lined notebooks where I just scribble down session notes and I'll say, oh, well, we met this person and I'll give a quick description. And then it's weeks later, sessions later, and I need to really quickly look up that person, that ally that I made or that enemy that I made. And I can't find the information. The cool thing about this is that it's all laid out for you. You'll be able to turn directly to the pages that has your relationship maps, directly to the page that lists all of your touchstones, your allies, and it's all right there for you, easy to find, and keeps your notes straight and easy, which I really love. And I don't know, I know you haven't had your hands on it yet, Justin, but how do you think that this type of tool is going to change gameplay for players?
Yeah, I think this is a really great resource for players. As you mentioned, being able to annotate your goals, the things that you're trying to achieve. I mean, ultimately, games are about choice. When you play, you make choices, and the choices that you're going to make are going to affect, not only yourself, but people in your coterie. You mentioned your touchstones as well. So there's kind of, if you'll permit me the language here, kind of shit rolls downhill, right? And so when you get when something goes awry in Vampire, that's really where the game starts to really take on. You get to see the consequences of your actions. And so this helps you, not only plot, oh, my character really wants to achieve this, but also how it affects other people, how it affects, the events of the chronicle. And really, as you say, it's a way to keep track of your story. Since this is the storyteller system, since the World of Darkness games are about reinvigorating the tradition of storytelling, this is a place to keep track of all that. And it's even keeping track of things like your predator type. How do you hunt? Even if this is something that doesn't overtly come up during the course of the game, or every situation that happens in the game is in contrast to how you choose, that's going to create, trouble. That's going to create outcomes. Oh, I'm used to, kind of sneaking in and taking from people, while they're asleep. Oh, but this time it's been, Chronicle's been so high action. I'm not used to it. And so all my feedings fail. All of that stuff makes for great fodder, makes for successes and failures that then create other, storytelling opportunities there. So keeping track of it all in one place is really a boon to the player.
Yeah, and I know for me, I play in a lot of different games, and it's not that I don't love each and every one of my characters, but keeping track just of what each character specifically does and how everything specifically affects that particular character is really important to me, to have a really enriched role-playing session. I don't want to just be sitting there and rolling dice when I'm told to and not really engaging with the story that's been going on. And not everybody has the opportunity. We talk about this a little bit in the player's guide. Not everybody has the opportunity to play in regular games every week, and keep that story fresh in their mind, or keep their characters even fresh in their mind. And there are a lot of rules to remember. There are a lot of, especially for new players, a lot of disciplines and what they do to remember. And having that written down in an easy to find format where you don't have to go running to the book every single time, the core rule book, looking it up, but not only just writing down, the exact description of what it does, but how it personally affects you, how your character actually reacts to certain situations, I think is really, really important for engaging role play. And it helps you learn a lot about your fellow players as well, because everybody really stays in character that way. And it's almost like an artifact of your own, I mean, like any journal would be for yourself in the real world.
That's a great word choice there. I was going to say artifact as well. Like, even when the chronicle concludes, you now have this record of it that you can go back and say, oh, I remember when we did this, or even trade them with the other players. Like, what were you up to here? I never saw.
Right?
Oh, that was
all the secrets are revealed. I mean, no, and that's a really, really cool point, is looking back. I mean, again, I have a bunch of, I use, composition notebooks and stuff like that. And I have them all back decades and decades of playing. And it's so much fun to go back and look. But this is almost like what those, all about me books, that you fill out when you're a kid, and then you grow up and you look back on them and like, oh wow, when I was 5, my favorite vegetable was broccoli or whatever. It's like, oh, this is a lot more interesting than that. But it's really going to be a cool thing to look back on and a useful tool in game. So I'm really excited about this one. We will be doing these for more brands, and they're looking really, really cool. So, and I just think it looks gorgeous at the table as well. Carry around with you and show that you are a true fan. Okay, so moving on to other new player tools. This is a product that I am so personally excited about. I have so many friends who have not only like never played any role-playing game before, but a lot of them have not, surprisingly, knowing me, and it's a very big surprise, they've not played Vampire the Masquerade. And I've been trying to get them onboarded, try to get them to play with me, and they're maybe a little apprehensive, a little scared. It's a big rule book. And some of them actually have played, but haven't played in a really long time because we played back in the 90s, and they don't know, what's changed. So we are going to be putting out the Vampire the Masquerade starter set. And this is something that has actually been in the works for a long time. There's a sneak preview at the cover. Very cool. And what the starter set is it's a boxed set that is going to have all of the tools you need to learn how to play or to teach people how to play Vampire the Masquerade. And it is going to come with 6 pre-generated characters so that you can jump right into play with quick start rules. The characters actually coming out, like we have beautiful character art that walks you through how the character is basically built, and then also starts off with a story that begins on the first night of your embrace. You wake up, and what do? And this actually takes you through all of the steps of what it is like to now be this totally different being. And how do you role play that? Role playing in Vampire is so different than role playing in any other game. And even if you have played role playing games before and haven't played this one, it is really a different, not only are the mechanics, unique, of course, storyteller system is very unique, but living within or unliving within this world is really different. And this takes you through all of the steps of what your feelings are as this happens to you. What is hunger? I mean, what happens to your body? What happens to your mind? What are the differences between the clans? And what happens when you wake up and you need to now manage a brand new world of darkness? And so I'm really excited about this one. And I think that it's going to be a really great step forward for new players. And I wanted to talk to you, Justin, about like what you think the biggest barrier has been for new players, and what other steps beyond using the product like this, like people can do when they want to get in. We're offering all of these new things, the player's guide, the journal, the starter set, but how do people who are watching right now and they're saying, oh, I really want to know all about Vampire the Masquerade, how do I break in? How do I start?
Yeah, I agree. I love your enthusiasm for this. And this is something that we were really excited about it when we first started talking about working together. And what this starter set does for me is it starts to address the question of coming into RPGs is no longer a kind of one-size-fits-all solution, right? Like in the past, when I was younger and first started playing, I played in my cousin's basement and kind of everybody came to it that way. But we now see that there are many, many people who are coming to the world of darkness who aren't coming to it from, their cousin's table in the basement, right? They're coming to it from, maybe they've seen LA by Night online, or they may have seen one of the TikTok groups who's kind of playing their improvised LARP on TikTok, whatever. People are discovering the world of darkness, not necessarily through tabletop RPG first. So this is a great way for them to get into it. the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition core book is a beautiful book, but it's like you say, it's a big book, right? And so, hey, I'm interested in doing this. Well, here, read these 500 pages. Nah, that's not going to happen necessarily, right? For people who want to get into it, more quickly, a box set, a starter set like this can really help you. Like, here's the most important things to know, get up and go, start telling your vampire story. I also think that this is going to be really, really valuable for players who are existing players who want to introduce the game to other friends, right? So it's no longer,
That's why I'm
here, borrow
excited.
my copy of this, right? It's, oh, you want to play this? You saw the show on the, you saw one of the game streams. Great, we can get this going right away. So this is an awesome kind of thing to just have in your trunk or in your, your back pocket, as it were. And when someone expresses interest, boom, you can get going. It's kind of like a quick start. It's got everything you need to know. It introduces all the concepts right away without having to go through, and read, and you get to experience them first. Reading the book and learning about it is an awesome way to get into RPGs. It's my course, having played and got into it that way. But if you want to just get in there and get your hands dirty right away, whether as a new player or as an experienced player who's bringing new people into it, this is the way to go. This is the way to go.
Definitely. And as you said, that my goal is to use this to bring my friends in. A lot of my friends have, caught the streams for sure. Or they've played other role-playing games, or they just really want to start with something and they really like the vampire aesthetic, and they've played the video games and they want a way to translate that onto the table and play something that is more face-to-face and analog with people. But looking at the book, like you said, it's a little daunting, to start off by yourself. This starter set is going to have stories that are broken up into parts so that you can play it almost like a board game. It's not a board game. It's definitely the role-playing game, but you have it in pieces so that you can learn it step by step. And as you play on and on, you're learning new mechanics of the storyteller system. You're learning how to roll and resolve dice rolls. You're learning how to do all of those things. And I think that it's going to be a really great tool for people who want to jump in.
Well, and it's in those kind of controlled session sizes too, right? Like, hey, I want to learn to play vampire. Awesome. Set aside 4 hours and we'll get going. Like, oh, not going to do that, right? But if we can tell an hour's worth of interesting and intense story, and kind of get it almost becomes like a greatest hits. You don't have to string it out over 4 hours. You can kind of, tonight we're working on this, and for people who don't have 4 hours every week to do, well, maybe we can do this over lunch, or we can do it before you guys go to the hockey game on Saturday, or whatever there, right? So it's just such a great, portable, convenient way to get into the hobby, or to kind of change your habits for the hobby. It's a win-win across the board.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that one, if you couldn't tell everybody. Okay, so moving on, because I could sit and talk about the starter set all day long, but we don't have that kind of time. We are on a schedule. So we have another really cool book. It is in the works right now. I don't even know if I should really be talking about it, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, because I'm very excited about it. We have amazing writers on this one, and this is a brand new source book for Vampire the Masquerade. It is our Blood Sigils book, and this is going to be the blood sorcery and thin blood alchemy source book. And I know that is going to, blow a lot of people's minds. People have been waiting for this. I've been reading what the writers have been putting down so far, and it is so good. But I know a lot of new players are watching this right now, and they're thinking, wait, blood sorcery, that sounds like magic. What is that? So Justin, can you give a rundown of what blood sorcery is in the world of darkness, and how it's used in game? How are people going to use this book?
Yeah, absolutely. Blood sorcery is a discipline, and of course, disciplines are these vampiric powers. And in many cases, disciplines are very narrow expressions of the blood. Things like tremendous speed, or unholy strength, or the ability to turn into a bat or a wolf, things like that. But blood sorcery is kind of a strange discipline in that it's much more flexible than other disciplines. It kind of lets you almost improvise the powers of the blood, or refine the powers of the blood into kind of unique expressions of it. And along those lines, thin blood alchemy is something that these young vampires of very thin or weak blood, very new arrivals to the world of darkness, can kind of tweak their blood to behave certain ways that older vampires or more potent blooded vampires can't. So what's really cool about this book is it not only gives you ways to tweak your blood once you are an established vampire, but if you're one of these almost accursed or duskborn thin-blooded vampires, here's ways that you can kind of bend your blood and create these wondrous effects, and to be honest, pretty spooky effects. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the outline that y'all had put together when we first started talking about doing this is it's not just a book of powers, right? It's a book about, you have this discipline. How do you get the ingredients necessary to fuel, these weird witchy blood powers? Or, how do you, if you meet someone else who's a practitioner of this, how do you relate to them? What are they doing? How can this affect your chronicle? Even if you aren't the person using blood sorcery, if you encounter it in kindred society at large, what does that mean? And so it's kind of a bigger holistic look at blood sorcery. Oh, and here's a bunch of cool stuff you can do as well. Here's a bunch of neat verbs you can exercise at the table. Again, games are about making choices, so here's some interesting new choices to make as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite part about this book is that it's not only a resource for players that would be using it, but it's also a resource for storytellers, for story hooks. When I was talking to, Ken Hite, who is one of the writers and the lead dev of this book, and I don't want to give too much away, I'm not going to spoil too much, but, we were talking about plans for it. And, he was talking about, well, what do you do in game? Like when you need to go and find this stuff, you need to find the recipes for these, you need to find the ingredients. Where would you go? And we were brainstorming about the different, back alley places you would go. Would you go to a bookstore and they have a secret back room in the back? Would you go to like a strange, grocery like market, like a kosher butcher to get like certain types of ingredients? Like where are the different like places that you would go that you wouldn't expect? Because all of vampire and everything in World of Darkness takes place in the real world. You are a vampire, walking around, and you need to acquire these things. It's not just like, oh, you instantly have it. And then there are all these other layers on top of it that I think for a storyteller, when I'm thinking about the types of stories that I want to write for this and put my players through, it's like, well, you need to acquire these things, and the store's only open during, daylight hours. How do you go about this? It actually builds itself. It builds all of the, different obstacles that you have to go through. That isn't just, oh, I'm going to sink my fangs into this thing right now. And I think that it makes such a more complete world. I don't know. I'm really all about this one.
And it helps push boundaries as well, right? Like, traditionally the practitioners of blood sorcery are the Banu Hakim and the Tremere. What does it mean when you are a gangrel who has, learned some kind of blood sorcery? Where did you pick it up? How do you, get your components for it, et cetera? One of the things that I think is really fascinating about the Anarchs in the 5th edition is, blood sorcery is kind of, it's almost this trade element among these various anarch pacts where, oh, I learned this blood sorcery from this Tremere who was fleeing the pyramid, this oppressive Tremere structure, and I learned it, and now I want to teach it to you. How do I teach it to you? Here I am, the gangrel who learned it, teaching it to a Toreador who, now, and so how does this affect vampire culture? There's all these great, it's not just a discipline, right? It's a set of outcomes. It's a set of storytelling components. It's, how does this affect our story?
Right. And taking place in modern nights, it's not through traditional means either. It's not just, oh, you find a dusty tome and here's this, ancient secret of how to do this. It's now digital. You find it on a secret website. You scan a QR code, you do this, you do that. And it's like, it's really mixing the two into a blend of all these different types of ways to perform these, rituals, which is, I don't know, I'm really excited. And the other thing, and you mentioned the Thin Bloods, the Thin Blood alchemy, is that I think that, I mean, maybe this is just in my circles, Thin Bloods among the elder vampires are looked down upon, at least in my games, a lot oftentimes. And I think that them having these extra special, like really cool, wicked things that they can do really not only just balances it game-wise, but also story-wise, it's so cool. It really makes me want to explore different types of characters that I can play. Especially now reading this new material that's coming, I'm like, oh yes, I am doing this. So
yeah, it's very much a tool to the World of Darkness is about challenging the status quo, right? It's about, here's this Camarilla prince with all this power and, really only serving themselves. Well, this is a way for you as a thin blood to kind of, give them the middle finger or, to kind of shake the pillars of of the ivory tower there. And so, these are ways for, again, it's not just a list of powers. It's a method by which you can challenge those unjust structures that exist, right? And, again, now that you've got power, do you use it justly? Or, are you just replacing, is this just regime change? Are you using blood sorcery to replace this unjust prince and become a tyrant yourself? It just provokes this endless string of questions, and questions are the stuff of stories. So I love books like this.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, I know I've said I'm excited about all of them because I really genuinely am. But it
don't
is
do books you
really
don't care about,
one.
right?
Yeah, I mean, look, new stuff is always so much fun. So, and as I say that, I'm going to talk a little bit about old stuff. Not really, it's not even that old, but the next stuff that's coming out also this year, we are doing Renegade Game Studios reprints of Cults of the Blood Gods and Chicago by Night, and more are coming too. Don't worry, all the rest of them are coming. But those are the first two that are coming out as reprints. And they're going to have little bits of fixes and some errata going on. I don't, want to dwell on too much of it, but I am really excited to have these back on the market. I know people have been looking for them, and they are coming. Oh, look, we're showing off the covers of them. And so if you have not had a chance to get your hands on Chicago by Night or Cults of the Blood Gods, those are coming very, very soon to game store or internet site near you. So yeah, anything to add on any of those? Justin.
I just want to say that I'm super glad to see these coming back into print. These were done originally by our friends at Onyx Path, and now you guys at Renegade are doing the printing and distribution of those going forward. Chicago by Night in particular is one of the classic vampire settings, and this of course updates it to 5th edition standards. And even if you don't want to tell a story in Chicago, Chicago by Night is this fantastic book that is basically a template for how you can set up a very political horror focused story for, again, if you don't want to do Chicago, if you want to do your home city, or if you want to do something far distant that's always had an allure to you, there's that there. But you can kind of use Chicago as a model to build it on. I'm so glad this is becoming available again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much to use there. I always take bits and pieces from different material anyway when I'm like creating my own thing. And again, there's so much to draw from in that book. So I'm really excited it's going to be back in print. Okay, moving along. Guess what? We're out of vampire stuff. But guess what? We're out of vampire stuff, and we get to talk about the next thing. I know that we teased it a little bit ago, but let's talk about Hunter. So Hunter is coming this summer. It is at the printer, and it is awesome. We're going to show you a quick peek at the cover, like a sneak peek at the cover of the book. And then we also, along with the release, we are going to be having custom Hunter dice that are not just like the vampire dice, but useful in game. Let's see if we can get a picture of those. And not only do we have that beautiful mock-up of the dice that are at the factory right now, but I also can show off factory samples of these dice. Let's see if I can get them in front of the camera. Okay. Ooh, they're a little blurry. Sorry, everybody, but they are awesome and real. They are in the classic Hunter orange and black. And these are, man, I really wish I could get the symbols to show up. Well, you're just going to have to wait. But these are great for, I know, right? when you are making your rolls, these are just like the vampire dice, where it's really easy to see what your successes, your failures are. I know that, I don't want to spoil too much, but we could talk maybe a little bit about the symbology or the roles if you want to on these, and a little bit about Hunter in general. I don't know where to begin. Let's start with the fact that Hunter it was developed by Paradox, in-house at Paradox. We're going to be publishing it here at Renegade, and we're developing already source books to follow it. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, what is Hunter? Like what's the rundown of who Hunters are in World of Darkness? I got way too excited about Hunter. So
no, that's
let's
good.
start there.
That's where my thoughts are right now too. Hunter is about the common people who discover vampires or other monsters, discover the supernatural exists, and it ignites a drive in them. It suddenly makes them need to do something about it. And Hunter is interesting to me because it's not about, we opened the discussion today talking about Second Inquisition, and Second Inquisition is very much about organizations. Here's the Special Affairs Division, or here is, the Society of St. Leopold, and these big groups of hunters. But Hunter the Reckoning is about, small groups of everyday people who discover the supernatural exists and have to do something about it. And so weirdly, as much as they're in conflict with the supernatural itself, you've learned that this vampire exists, but also potentially as an antagonist is this big hunter, this larger org. So you may run afoul of the FBI while you're hunting vampires as well. And the difference is, as a hunter, a capital H hunter, you have drive. You have something that pushes you above and beyond. You have something that makes you go that much further. And that's something that the orgs themselves don't have. The SAD doesn't have drive. The SAD largely takes orders. Again, we talked about the World of Darkness being opposition to the status quo. And in many cases, these orgs are the status quo. Here's this massive government organization that exists to oppose vampires. It exists to impose its order, as opposed to me, who's a plumber who learned that my neighbor is a vampire. Oh God, what am I going to do about this? And, I come into contact with other people, other common, individuals, everyday people who, learn about this. And now we start to have to think creatively. We're basically this kind of almost startup. We call them cells of hunters, these groups of hunters that band together. And so because we do have drive, that's kind of what you were alluding to there with the dice. There are systems that allow you to press your luck as a hunter. It allows you to go above and beyond, but you're risking something there. You can invoke your drive in certain situations, but it's not just free dice. It comes at a cost. It comes as a risk. You saw the little exclamation point there on one of those dice. I'm not even going to say what the dice are called yet, but that exclamation point means something specific. So all of this is again about challenging the status quo. These monsters exist. They are exploiting society. These big orgs exist. They're imposing their will, and here's you caught in the midst of all of it. I always think kind of a conflict triangle is more interesting than just a duality here. And so Hunter is really about taking back the night, fighting against the supernatural monsters' predation, but also about basically doing what's right.
Yeah, I was actually planning to ask you, and you kind of went there already, so that's good. What the difference is. We talked about Second Inquisition coming out very soon, and during this global event, that is threatening vampires everywhere. You have these, basically they're hunters. But what is the difference between the evil threat of these factions in during the Second Inquisition and these splinter cells or individual cells or individual hunters that you take on as a player character in Hunter? And I know for me, character wise, what my motivation is very different. My motivation as a storyteller, playing the storyteller characters that are after the supernatural beings that that are part of this event of the Second Inquisition. It's really like, I have to do this, I'm told to do this, or society has made me do this. Well, Hunter for me is like, I have a personal connection for some reason. Was somebody I love killed? Was there a mysterious disappearance? Did like you said, you witness your neighbor? But I'd love for you to explore a little bit more about the difference, because we did make it, really clear that for Second Inquisition, these are storyteller villains, right? Not to be played at the table by characters. And now we have Hunter coming out. This is meant to be played by players at the table. Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit?
I wouldn't call them villains necessarily. I prefer to think of them as antagonists. And there's a slight difference in the meaning of the word there. And like antagonists, I can often understand the motivations of, right? And so one of the things that I think is particularly valuable here is that, again, in opposition to the status quo, the orgs take orders. The orgs want something, and opposing the supernatural, just happens to be a means to that end. But for the individual hunters, what ignites that drive is that very personal spark, whether it is personal loss or, maybe my father was a werewolf and, what has that done to me? And one of the things that I think is also really cool about this is that it lets us kind of recast those antagonists. So if I'm running a vampire chronicle and I've bought the Second Inquisition book, well, I can also use the Second Inquisition book as antagonist for my hunter game, because I am this individual hunter. My troop is playing these individual hunters, and we still have these orgs that we're in opposition to. So there's this kind of greater sense that World of Darkness isn't just these silos of individual games. It is a true world of darkness. These pieces do interrelate. But then again, to go back to your actual question, drilling down into the individual hunter state. Here's hunters who are putting everything they have on the line, right? It's not like I just go to my job as a vampire hunter. If I am I'm the cable guy and I learn that monsters exist, and hey, I can't come into work today because I have to go fight werewolves. That's not going to fly, right? So that's one of the first costs you start paying as a hunter. You mentioned for the vampire starter set, here's your first night as a vampire. How does it change your perspective? Well, what does it mean to be a hunter? What does it mean that, your wife now no longer understands, I have to go kill monsters at night, honey. I'll be back later. What does that do to your relationship with her? And that's obviously going to cause some stress there. Here's again these very personal stakes, but you're not going it alone. You're finding these other hunters who are in the cell with you, and they have this common awful knowledge that at least binds you. And one of the things also that kind of is implicit in this is when you're a vampire, you've got forever to kind of go on. But Hunter pretty much assumes this isn't going to last forever. You're only going to be able to do this so long. And so, how meaningful can you make your actions until ultimately the cost is too high, whether it is your own death, whether it is now your inability to relate to the world. If you are just so stressed and traumatized by what you've witnessed, how does your story end? Every story has a beginning, middle, and an end. So how does your character story end? And what is the story of your cell?
I love talking to you about these things because I have like story idea after story idea after story idea. Just in what you just said in the last, couple of minutes, I'm like, oh, you're talking about, oh, you have a wife at home. How's she going to understand? Maybe I'm just going dark, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, you have a wife at home, and now you've been spotted hunting, vampires. Now they know where you live and what's going to happen to her now. How do you protect that wife? Right? That's a story hook right there,
And so even getting into systems there, now she is a touchstone. If you've played Vampire, you're familiar with touchstones. And here is a person who very much means something to me as a hunter. And so the principle is similar there.
Yeah. And then we've all seen those, movies or TV shows where, the beat cop or whatever rolls up onto an FBI investigation and they're like, this is not your jurisdiction or whatever. And I can only imagine that that's what it's like in the hunting world, where I'm an individual, hunter, and I roll up on a full investigation by any of the factions that are going on, Second Inquisition wise. And what is that conflict that's going to be there? And I
that's one of the things that comes up frequently in Hunter too is, when we say they're antagonists, that doesn't mean necessarily that, oh, you see the FBI, you see the SAD over there, and immediately it becomes a gunfight. Not necessarily. The SAD may see a value in, oh, here's these yokels with guns, and they think, they know vampires exist. Let's send them into the vampire's lair to flush them out and see what happens. So what happens there? Like, you already know that you probably shouldn't trust the SAD. And it's not just governmental organizations too, right? Like there's all kinds of orgs out there. We mentioned before the Society of St. Leopold. So here's this, very strong, religiously motivated org. There are definitely things like corporate orgs, things almost like not as comical as Ghostbusters is, but here's professional groups that have a specific application, something that they're trying to accomplish. If you're a long-standing fan of the World of Darkness, if you've been playing for a long time, you'll recognize some of these. And if you're a new player, it's just a new piece you can use as well, because here they are as part of the setting. So this is great stuff for long-standing players, and again, a very substantial world for new players as well.
Well, since you mention it, then, and we're not going to do too many spoilers or anything, but Hunter the Reckoning has been around in previous editions. What is the difference that we're going to see with 5th edition Hunter?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. One of the big ones here is, the previous editions of Hunter the Reckoning had this idea of the imbued, that you became a hunter, and this is kind of, for 5th edition, we've leaned into drive being the things that pushes you into being a hunter. In previous editions, it was more of a supernatural power. There was something behind the scenes that was awakening you and kind of leading you into this supernatural world. And that was one of the things that many players found difficulty sort of rationalizing, right? Like, well, I'm a hunter of the supernatural, but I'm supernatural myself. And so, we're definitely moving away from that in the 5th edition. But if that's something you like, the way Hunter is set up is it's very flexible. So one of the edges, for example, these benefits that hunters have, let's say, we're talking about arsenal. And so, I may have access to these amazing weapons because, I used to be a member of the SAD. And so, I smuggled these weapons out of the facility. Or, I may have arsenal, literally the same edge, but in my head, an angel puts a gun on the side of the bed every day, and I wake up and it's there, and I have to use that. And so that's a way for me to, become questionable, almost supernatural myself. It's a way to kind of introduce the imbued. If you like that element of the World of Darkness and Legacy editions, you can use it that way, but you're not required to use it. There are certain things that, well, why can the hunter do this? This is kind of flirting with the supernatural. Yeah, that's risky stuff. And other hunters may look at you, you've used this edge. Are you one of them? So there's all of these, these interesting conflicts within the hunter society itself. So, we're kind of taking, again, it's a phrase I like to use, the greatest hits. We're taking some of the greatest hits of Hunter and remixing them for the 5th edition.
I love that. I also love the fact that it's creating this conflict within, hunting, parties. You're playing around a table with other people, and what brings you together, and what is the conflicts that's within the group. Because in Vampire, we already know we have that. And so it's nice to hear that we're going to have that player interaction, or it's not like, oh, it's hunky-dory, we're all going to go and, hunt the supernatural. There is something that would create some sort of, mystery or secrets. And I think that's what draws me so much to the storyteller system in general, is that not only is the system awesome, but like there's a reason to be at the table and have conversations with your fellow players. And it's not just, oh, we're gonna, bust down a dungeon door and grab some loot. This is a very different type of story that you're telling in a role-playing game, and having those conflicts are cool. And I know that personally, I draw, especially like my hunter role models from across popular culture. There are a lot of them, and they do have different origin stories. My favorite is one that does draw on supernatural. I'm sure all of you guys can guess who she is, especially if you follow me, because I talk about it a lot. But then there are also so many other styles of supernatural hunters. I mean, you mentioned Ghostbusters, which I never even really made the connection to, but yeah, of course they're hunters. And so I think people will be able to draw from influences that they've grown up with, or read in different media, books and comic books, and seen in films and TV shows. And I think that, for me, Vampire draws so much from different pop culture vampire inspiration, and that's why I love it, because it's almost like this combination of all of the things that I grew up with that I love about vampires in general. And Hunter can do the same thing, just with the opposite, you know. So yeah,
There's
I'm
lots of
very
stuff to
excited
tweak
for
there
this one.
too. I mean, you know, let's say that, you know, we're playing a chronicle, and everything that we've seen and unfolded so far has convinced the cell, right? That at the cell, everyone at the table, like, oh, we know this is a werewolf. We know this is a werewolf. And turns out this is a serial killer, right? This is not a supernatural monster. This is a very human threat. What do you do, right? If you've committed to opposing the supernatural, and now you have to, are you going to kill a person? What does that do to you? What does that, you know, what costs does that evoke? Is that the right answer? And in many cases, that may end up being an antagonist. You know, I talked earlier about, you know, the hunter career is probably not a long one, but the hunter who goes too far is very much one of those destinations, right? You aren't always going to get gunched at the hands of a vampire. You know, here's a hunter who has taken too many shortcuts, you know, who has conceded too much moral ground and is now arguably as bad as the vampire, right? And so where do you draw those lines? And that's going to be different for every troop. That's going to be, you know, different in every story. But you know, the conflicts in Hunter aren't just, you know, monster of the week, supernatural bashes.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I know I say I'm super excited about everything, but I really am. I mean, there's so much great content coming. And you know, with that note, on that note, I don't want to forget to tell everybody to make sure to go to the Renegade website, renegadegamestudios.com. You can place pre-orders for all of this stuff, and that's coming. We do have even more coming, but we're only allowed to tease so much. So the next time, Justin, that we get together, I know we're going to be announcing a lot of other great stuff. But for now, I really hope that everybody's so excited about what 2022 is going to bring for World of Darkness. And I want to encourage everybody who wants to know more about the brands that are right now Vampire, Hunter, and World of Darkness in general. You can go to the World of Darkness website. There's the World of Darkness Discord. Renegade Game Studios has a Discord. We also have a dedicated Facebook group for role-playing games. So please make sure to check out all of the links that I'm sure are going to be on the bottom of the screen somewhere here to get all of the information and stay up to date with anything you have questions about. There are a lot of great people that are always in these different forums chatting about games that are going on, what you can do in your own stories. And it's a really great resource. All of them are really great resources to go ahead and check out. I think that is it. I just want to make sure that everybody stays tuned and checks out the calendar for the rest of everything that is going on at Renegade Con. We have so many more things to talk about, and make sure to check out the storyteller panel with Trivia and Diana. That's going to be really, really cool as well. Justin, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I know I get a very, I don't know, overly, I don't know, excited about all of this stuff. It's just so much fun. I love working on all of this with you guys.
Yeah, I love it too. Thanks for having me, especially to the audience too. Thanks for listening to us talk about this. Very much looking forward to having this stuff in y'all's hands and letting y'all play, tell your own stories, because that's really what's important to me, right? I love games because they let groups of people get together and tell their stories. So it's fantastic doing stuff like this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us, and everybody out there watching. Thank you for listening in and hearing us ramble on about the things that we love and the things that we're going to share with you. And we will see you next time.